Hi, I'm Miles Goldsmith, and this is my podcast, Game Design Hour, where I interview the people behind the video games you love. On today's episode, I'm interviewing Steve Crouse, the creative director and producer of Can't Drive This. Before I get into the episode, I need to let you know about today's sponsor, Hoffman's Woodstuffs. They specialize in the design and fabrication of custom furniture made from reclaimed or sustainably sourced hardwoods. They also make great household goods and gifts for any occasion. You can find them on Instagram at Hoffman's Woodstuffs, or you can find their website using the link below. Let's get into the interview. When did you first realize that you wanted to be a video game designer?
That is a good question. Probably when I played my first or second video game. Just, you know how video games are. And just kind of clicked me in a way where I said, that's awesome. That's what I want to do. I want to make that magic somehow. Because it felt like magic. And it still kind of does when you play it,
So what were some of the first few video games you worked on, and what lessons did you learn from those?
The first few video games I worked on, that depends how you define video game. The first stuff that I ever released was like back when I was doing freelance work, and that was like mobile games. And those were, very rough. I'd say today. I learned a lot. I mean, I didn't go to game design school or stuff. And I developed video games before I went to study design. And that helped me a lot, just give me some practice before I did the theory. And then when I learned the theory, that helped me go, oh, that's why that didn't work. Or that's why that did work, for example. So that helped. I think the first game I ever did was called Oswald the Octopus, which was a side-scrolling mini game where you had this little stupid octopus and you squirt on fish, and it was cute, but it was dumb.
Okay.
But it was fun.
So how did the idea for Can't Drive This originate?
The idea for Can't Drive This, that's actually one of those stories you tell where everybody says, yeah, that's not what happened, but it actually happened. Kind of like that, the Newton Apple thing. We were doing a game jam, and the theme was shape shifting, I think. And so what happened was we had this toy racetrack lying around at the office, and we never got around to building it. And then, we got sidetracked because we didn't have an idea, and we got sidetracked and we started procrastinating. And then one of our developers, Joe, he says, or somebody else, I think it was Joe, he says, wouldn't it be cool if we could just drive this now without having to build it? And then we said, yeah, but we have to build it. So that's, we don't want to build it. We just want to play with it. And then he says, well, it would be fun if we could just, build and drive at the same time. And then we were sitting there and we were like, wait a minute. And that's how that whole idea came. And it took us like, I don't know, 5 minutes to get to the idea for the prototype. And it took us like, I don't think it's like 6 hours to get to that point where we had that idea. Just, that's how that happened.
Wow. That's really cool. So how does the original idea differ from what ended up getting shipped?
Wow. A lot, actually. But mostly in terms of the values, not the core mechanic, more like the soft metrics of the game. So the basic idea was you had these blocks and you placed them, and then you drove on those blocks, and if you went too slow, you explode. And that's still entirely the main game, the main core concept of the game. But what changed is a lot of how the game feels and how the game plays. So it got a lot faster. The tiles are entirely different from what they are now. It looks a lot different because we realized when we were making the game jam, we were using this hyper realistic car prefab system, and it had gears and it had transmission and it had all those wonky things that nobody really needs in a party game. And because of that, we tried to tweak the values because, we didn't have any time because it was 72 hours. So we tried to tweak the values, and we ended up with something that was like still too fast for a real car, but still way too slow for a fun game. And then eventually, one of the biggest things we did to improve the game was just to rewrite the entire car mechanic, and have it be like an arcadey, snappy game.
So were there any big ideas that got cut early on in development?
That's a tough question because development really went off the rails during for Can't Drive This. There are a bunch of things that we had to cut eventually. A bunch of tiles, a bunch of game modes that we had to cut that we really would have loved to add. And for example, like a 4-person online multiplayer. But that's all because this was our second title, our second big title, the first title that we released to retail. And we still had a lot to learn. And we, at the same time as we were working on Can't Drive This, we were still working on ports for our previous game, Chromagun, which was ported during the time that we developed Can't Drive This, was being ported to PS4, Xbox, Switch, and to PSVR. And that took like a whole lot of time and a whole chunk of time away from Can't Drive This. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, we were also developing our next title already, Escape the Loop, which, just the entire team had to shift between projects, and then things had to get cut. And in the end, we decided, or somewhere in the middle of the development, we decided that we should rework the entire code from the ground up because we were still working on game jam code. So there's a lot of stuff that went wrong during development. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say that we had to cut stuff from early on, but we had to, rewrite and therefore cut later on.
Mm-hmm. What were some of those tiles and game modes that ended up getting cut?
So one game mode we had that we still want to do, but we may not. We will see. We'll just have to see how it goes. Was King of the Hill. Basically, you have this tile, and excuse me, you had this tile in the center, and whichever car. So it was 2 players, two-player teams, each team having 1 driver and 1 builder. And whichever driver would stay on the center platform the longest would, be crowned King of the Hill. And then you had to drive to another hill, and then whoever, got the most crowns would win. Or like a catch game mode, basically, where one driver had to catch the other driver. And when you caught him, you got a big crown on your head, and they had to, drive away. There was a bunch of cool stuff that we would have loved to do. And like I said, may still do in the future, but that's still open.
So what was the most interesting tile to design?
The most interesting tile to design? Probably the turbine, because that went through a bunch of different iterations. It started off as a mini golf windmill. That was back when we didn't have, that construction aesthetic that the game now has. And when we started developing, it was kind of like a mini golf theme, but not really, and was weird. So we had this windmill, and it was super annoying, and it was just horrible. And we tried to, experiment with the velocity of the rotor blades and the thickness of the rotor blades and the positioning, and nothing made sense because it just felt off. And then at some point, when we decided to go to that construction theme, that informed the final design of the turbine, because the windmill has nothing to do in a construction setting. Mm-hmm. So we thought, all right, what can we do to make this tile fun and to make it fit with the theme? And then just naturally, like a wind turbine, like a just big turbine to generate like a wind tunnel. That was our inspiration there, and that just clicked. And that's a cool tile. That's fun.
Similar question: what was the most difficult tile to design?
Same answer.
Okay. Was the game jam a public game jam, or were you guys just doing it on your own for the fun of it?
It was Ludum Dare, which is open to participate for everybody, but we did it in a closed team.
Mm-hmm. How did you guys place when you submitted the game?
Wow, I do not remember. Not too high up. I think it was like in the top 100, but maybe I could look it up. I don't know. For the life of me, I can't remember.
Sorry to pop in here, but I just want to let you know about today's sponsor, Hoffman's Woodstuffs. They specialize in the design and fabrication of custom furniture made from reclaimed or sustainably sourced hardwoods. They also make great household goods and gifts for any occasion. You can find their website in the description below, or you can find them on Instagram at Hoffman's Woodstuffs. Let's get back into the interview. What is the process for creating one of the different game modes?
So the main idea of the game that one player drives and one player builds, we had a bunch of different ideas where we would have just a driver, or we had just a builder, or the builder would make different or have some sort of different way of building. There was one idea where we had like where the builder would play like a version of Snake to build tiles, and then after we iterated through a few of those, we said, okay, no, we have to have these few core metrics that we cannot change. That is one driver, one builder, at least. The builder always places the tiles in the same way, and the driver always explodes if they go too slow. So based on that, we looked at a bunch of different multiplayer games that had different modes and that had like a bunch of classic game modes, like almost trope-like game modes, like Capture the Flag. And then we took those game modes and we said, how can we make this classic Capture the Flag more fun in a setting with monster trucks? So Capture the Flag became Capture the Egg. And because we wanted to have this interaction between the car and this big egg that would just, create wonky physics moments for the player. And the same went for a bunch of the other modes that unfortunately didn't make it into the game.
So what was your favorite mode out of the ones that made it into design?
Absolutely Capture the Egg. I think that's how Can't Drive This should be played.
What was your biggest design challenge while creating Can't Drive This, and how did you solve it?
I think the biggest design challenge was the scoring and how the builder builds. So we had trouble deciding on how the player would get scored without it being just distance from the start. So we wanted to do things like encourage the player to do crazy stunts that would be dangerous, but that would, give them an incentive to play in a less than safe way, because that's just more fun to play. And we tried giving them points for doing tricks or for doing flips. And in the end, everything tended to, be a way for the player to exploit the system. So they would, if given the opportunity, a player will optimize the fun out of a game. And that's absolutely what we saw happen with Can't Drive This. So we gave them points for playing in a super crazy way. And what they did is they optimized that to a point where they would just build, one certain tile and then a few tiles around them, and they would just do flips over and over again to score the highest score. And that was really, really tough, because we wanted them to not drive safely, but somehow reward them not driving safely, which is counterintuitive for the player, of course. In the end, we added bonus tiles, and we have had them unlocked items for doing flips and doing crazy stuff. And the other hard part was having the builder not build too far away from the driver, which is something that a lot of players want to have, interestingly. So in Can't Drive This, the builder can only see as far as a few tiles ahead of the driver.
Mm-hmm.
So the builder always moves with the driver. And the problem here is that, or the design here is that you cannot, just keep building a long track. So then the driver would just, drive along the track. That would be boring. And finding a balance between giving the builder enough freedom of motion to build
Mm-hmm.
and not enough to have the game still be chaotic, that was a tough part too.
Mm-hmm. Were there any stunts that ended up getting cut from the game?
I don't think so. No.
Were there any interesting cosmetics that ended up getting cut from the game?
Yes, there were a few. We developed and we began to release, or we began to just ramp up our early access updates again. And what happened was during that time, we had police car customization. So we had cherry, and we had like a paint job and everything. And during that time, that was the time of, I think we all remember George Floyd. And we decided to not include the police customizations into the game for obvious reasons. Just, as our way to show support, and not that it supported, but it at least didn't antagonize.
So what was the toughest game mode to design, and why?
The single player mode was by far the toughest one to design. To have a game which is inherently a multiplayer game, and make that into a single player game, that was rough. That was hard. I think we're pretty happy with how it turned out, because I feel that it still feels like Can't Drive This, and it still feels like you're playing a two-player game, even though you're alone. Although I do think it's the weakest of the game modes, and we probably should have included it as sort of a training mode, not a single-player mode, because that kind of detracts from the whole party game idea. But that mode was fun and hard to design.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the major differences between the Game Jam build and the final build?
A lot of graphics updates. Basically, we really revamped the entire game in the middle of development. So differences are pretty much everything aside from the main idea of the game.
Can players expect to see any major updates in the future? Maybe new game modes, new tiles, etc.?
We really hope so. We'll have to see how it goes. I mean, we're an indie studio with just a few people, so we have to see that we work on whatever is most sensible for us, or we won't eat.
Mm-hmm.
And all of us like eating, so we'll have to see. If the game goes well, there is absolutely no reason not to update the game, and we'd love to, but it just has to make financial sense, and that we'll just have to see.
Looking back now, what do you wish you could have done differently before the initial release?
Everything, absolutely everything. We did a whole bunch of stuff wrong, and we shouldn't have done a lot of that. I think we're working on the next game, which we're doing a lot of those things better than we did before, and just the whole working on a game from where the basis of the code is still Game Jam code. That's something that we shouldn't have done from the beginning. We should have, after the Game Jam, we should have said, all right, scrap the whole project. We take just the idea and we start reworking from there. And we should have reworked the idea as well. So a lot of game design for Can't Drive This came during the development of Can't Drive This, which was the wrong way to go. We refined the idea as we went. But at the same time, we built the old designs. So the old designs were the basis for the code, and then the code was the basis for the new design. And then we had to layer that on top of it. And then that just became a huge Jenga tower of bullshit that just collapsed, and we had to start over.
How long did it take you guys to make Cant Drive?
Wow. Way too long. We started in 2016 and we released in 2021. So way too long.
What was your biggest lesson from working on Cant Drive This?
Biggest lesson from working on Cant Drive This would have to be think before you do. And don't be afraid to scrap stuff early on if it doesn't fit the design.
So what's next for you? What are you working on now?
So right now we are working on Escape the Loop, which is a single player, third person adventure game. So pretty much the exact opposite of Cant Drive This, where you're stuck in a time loop and you have 5 minutes to try and solve the game. And if you don't, you start over.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, we're super happy. It's the first time the entire team is actually working on one title together. So that's a lot of fun, and the game is just super fun to make because we get to fill an open world with all kinds of stuff, and it's just a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
It's been awesome having you.
And that's how the interview went down. I want to thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed the episode, it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe, follow. It's different on every platform. I do my best to put out an episode every other Monday. And make sure to go and check out Hoffman's Woodstuffs using the link in the description below or by following them at Hoffman's Woodstuffs on Instagram. Before I end this episode, I want to let you know that the amazing people over at Pixel Maniacs sent me a copy of the Game Jam version of the game. So if you want to see how the Game Jam version of Cant Drive This looked, you can head over to my YouTube, Game Design Hour, where you can find footage from the Game Jam version of the game. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope we can see you next time.